on the newsmaker line, Amos Waranch, and he is with a law firm that we're going to talk with here. And he is also, as our previous guest today, he also is in the Dallas area. But we're going to talk to him about something that's in the news. And I've got to tell you, Amos, first of all, welcome to the program today, sir. I appreciate you being on.
Thanks for having me on.
I got to tell you, the subject that we're about to cover about Boeing being sued by more than 400 pilots, I realize this is on the 737 MAX. I just today booked a flight for Washington, D.C. for a seminar I have to do in September, and I saw on my ticket that my flight into Washington is a 737, and I got to tell you, I froze for about a half a second.
Well, I believe that the 737 Air Max 8, the plane at issue, has been downed.
Yeah.
So,
I know I'm not on it. It just made me stop for a minute. So let me ask you this question. And we all know of the two accidents that happened, not in the U.S., overseas. They happened almost back to back, Amos. But now we have 400 pilots joining a class action suit. Let me ask you, from your perspective, and this is pure speculation on your part and mine, but Amos, there's no way that Boeing didn't know they had a problem with that system, is there?
Almost certainly not. And there's actually another lawsuit, another class action lawsuit that, in my opinion, is more likely to quickly show evidence of that, and that's it's called Seeks versus Boeing. And so this is, it was filed in April of this year, and it's the investor shareholder suit.
Okay.
And basically in that suit, which is a separate class action lawsuit, just to be clear for your listeners, in that suit, the allegation is that the CFO and the CEO of Boeing intentionally lied to investors because they knew about the problems with the safety systems. It's called like the MCAS.
Right.
It's a flight control system. Basically, that lawsuit alleges that Boeing and its executives knew about that and intentionally concealed information to boost the stock price. And then investors who purchased the stock at the time of during when these false communications were made, were basically defrauded. And in the new lawsuit is similar. The pilots are alleging emotional distress and, fear for their lives and lost wages and things like that because they were forced to fly this plane, which then later turned out to be significantly less safe than Boeing had alleged.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Your question was, did the executives, did Boeing know what they were doing? And there are multiple federal class action lawsuits that allege, yes, they knew exactly what they were doing.
Well, the suit that was filed in April, and we had a slight blip in your phone at the time, I missed the first word. Who is it versus Boeing?
SEEKS, I believe.
Okay.
I'm doing that from memory, but if my memory serves me correctly, the lead plaintiff in the shareholder suit is Richard Seeks.
Well, my understanding is, and just to get everybody up to speed here a little bit, what Boeing had done was they basically had taken the 737 fuselage and everything. They didn't change that. And then they added heavier engines onto them to do what they needed it to do. And there was a tendency with the heaviness of these engines toward the back of the wing to cause the nose to pivot up. And so the program that you're talking about was supposed to jump in and level that out, bring the nose back down, and it didn't happen. Now, Amos, I don't know if you've heard this or not, and I'm asking out of pure and sheer ignorance. I've had some pilots say to me that they talked to guys that flew that, and they said there was a switch that if you just flipped that system off, you could fly the plane on your own and you wouldn't have had a problem. Did these pilots, were they not even told that?
So I don't want to misrepresent my expertise. I'm not a pilot. But my understanding is that there were two, they called them optional safety features,
right,
that were really pretty critical to safely and carefully flying the plane. And, to your point, the if there were some sort of manual override system, I could see that being a potential defense for Boeing. But these lawsuits have just started. As far as I know, there has not been significant civil discovery. So, after perhaps 6 months, and there's been a little bit more discovery, the plaintiffs and their lawyers will know a heck of a lot more about the potential defenses of Boeing, of whether there was this switch override that could potentially have Boeing say, look, it was perfectly safe. You could have overrided the flight control system. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that specific question about the manual override, but what I have read is that exactly two features that were pretty critical to the safe operation of the plane were sold as optional features.
When you look at this, and all this, folks, is going to really come to a head because October the 21st, this is all going to start playing out in a Chicago court. And just between you and me, Amos, I'd give about a month's pay to be in that courtroom that day. I mean, listen, there are going to be movies made about this. I mean, there's no way around it. But again, getting technical, they talk about the angle of attack. That's where the plane's nose is. According to Pilot X, now he's the main lead on this class action lawsuit, he is choosing not to give his regular name because he doesn't want repercussions from Boeing or an airline or anything, and I get that. Mm-hmm. But he says Boeing's defective design causes the MCAS, this special software, to activate based on the single input of a failed AOA sensor without cross-checking its data with another properly functioning AOA sensor. Is the allegation here, as best you know it, Boeing maybe didn't test things to the nth degree? Boeing knew they had some problems, but probably somehow thought maybe with subsequent training they would get by all this. Just like I get updates on my iPhone that maybe they would come out with an update that they would download into 737 MAX software and this thing would be fixed. But because of the world that we live in now, Amos,
I don't know what Boeing's intention with that was, but you actually bring up a really important point, which is that there are also allegations in the complaints in both of the class action lawsuits we've been discussing this afternoon that part of the reason why this occurred is that the FAA is essentially giving Boeing its own ability to certify the safety and flight worthiness of the 737 Air Max. And I mean, the CEO of Boeing was Mr. Shanahan, the former defense secretary who just resigned, or acting defense secretary who just resigned in the United States. So,
So does this mean there could be further action taken even up to and including the federal government?
Well, there's no legal mechanism to sue an administrative agency for doing what the FAA is alleged to have done in this case. I think alleged is the wrong word. I think everyone agrees that the FAA did, in fact, allow Boeing to self-certify. And so there's no legal mechanism for an individual or a class of individuals to sue the FAA over that decision to allow Boeing to self-certify. I mean,
that's like here in Allen County, Amos. That'd be like saying, okay, the Department of Health is just going to let all the restaurants check themselves and then send us once a month a report on what they found. That's nuts.
Yes. And I mean, there's other areas where this type of regulatory capture exists, but one would hope that it doesn't happen in areas of such critical health and safety for the flying public and the general public, like this particular one. So should somebody at the FAA lose their job? Almost certainly. Do we want, as the people, to vote for elected representatives, which will require the regulatory agencies to actually do their job and protect people? Yes, we do. But I think that to file a lawsuit against the FAA for that conduct, as far as I'm aware, there's no legal mechanism to do so. No
real precedent for that. Let me ask you one last thing. We're talking with Amos Waranch, who's down there. He's with a law firm down in Texas, and this has got to be just
Waranch Nunn, sir.
Well, I'm sorry?
It's called Waranch Nunn.
Oh, that's right, because you got to get your partner in there too, don't you?
Yeah.
If you leave him out, he gets really mad. He gives you free tickets to fly on a 737 Max. But
you had something else you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, look, let me ask you this, and this is pure speculative, and I get that, and it's probably unfair for me asking you. In the competitive world in which we live, you've got Boeing, you've got Airbus, and then you've got some smaller players. But I mean, the racing to the finish line for the Boeing and the Airbus, Boeing probably thought, if we don't do this now, get this out now, Airbus is going to get the edge for the next 3 years or whatever. But in the long run, can you see a scenario where this might hurt Boeing, and maybe if we find out that they intentionally didn't come out with truth to their pilots, could maybe even at the end take Boeing down?
Boeing is a humongous company. They had $101 billion, $101 billion in revenue in 2018. So, even if the company lost half of its value, it is very unlikely to, file for some sort of bankruptcy or dissolution. Especially, it's traded on the New York Stock Exchange. But I think that, part of the reason for the class action lawsuit by the shareholders, the one filed in April, is because their stock price has already taken a beating.
Yeah.
And, I think it's unlikely that the company will actually shut down because of this, but I wouldn't be surprised if they, at the end of the day, 5 years from now, if they've lost several lawsuits, had to pay several civil fines, and potentially even face some sort of government fines and criminal type investigations, especially if it can be proven that some of the top brass lied to regulators.
Yeah, that's the ugly part right there.
With the flight worthiness.
Yeah, that's the ugly part. Amos, thank you so much for today. He is with Waranch Nunn, and what we're going to do, Amos, we're going to take this interview, put it up on our website, and we'll have a link where people can get to your site and follow you and find out your thoughts on many things. Hey, listen, as this case goes forward starting in October, I'm going to keep you in my cyber Rolodex here. I have a funny feeling there are some future conversations that will be pretty amazing to have. But for today, Amos Waranch, hey, thank you so very much. We appreciate your time today.
Sincerely appreciate you. Thanks for having me on, Pat. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you very much.